Hi, everybody. Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat, and a different kind of show tonight. I want to go live and interact with you guys here the first 25, 30 minutes, and then the second half of the show. I had an opportunity to catch up with Shane Beamer. He's the new South Carolina head coach, and as Georgia fans know, he was a big part of Kirby Smart getting off to such a great start here at Georgia. He was on the Georgia coaching staff, helped the Bulldogs recruit, special teams, tight ends. From there, Shane went to Oklahoma and now the new South Carolina head coach. And I'm going to talk to Shane about a lot of different things. And some of it's going to be about Georgia when he was here and what he picked up from Kirby and being on that staff and what he thought one of the big keys to the Rose Bowl, to the national championship game was that a lot of people didn't really notice that Shane noticed. And but a lot of it's going to be about South Carolina and Shane Beamer, just to give you a heads up. It's just interesting to hear from a coach that's this open and this transparent just about everything. And I know Georgia fans certainly love SEC football. When you're one of the top dogs, as Georgia is, you have more of a tendency to pay attention to what's going on around the league. And hey, how about today? How about Gus Malzahn being hired by Central Florida? And a lot of the talk is, did Central Florida get a better head coach than Tennessee did? And you know what? I guess I would be among those that would say, yeah, if you give me the choice between Gus Malzahn and Josh Heupel, I'm probably going to take Gus Malzahn. Why? Well, because I took a look at, just how much Gus Malzahn won. The most yards given up against Georgia prior to last season was in 2013, Gus Malzahn. And the most yards that Kirby Smart defense ever gave up was back the same year, 2013, Gus Malzahn. I mean, the guy is an offensive innovator. Now, you could make the case that Auburn had grown stale, but, what a tough gig, right? Still, he beat Nick Saban 2 out of the last 4 years he's played him. That's pretty remarkable when you consider that Clemson's the only other team that's done that. So he's going to Central Florida. Meanwhile, Tennessee has a coach in Josh Heupel who is he a rising star, isn't he, right? He takes over a program that went 13-0, and I don't think anybody expected him to repeat an undefeated season, and he went 12-1. But then the next year he only won 10 games, and then last year he only won 6. So it almost looks like Josh Heupel was on the downside. So very interesting to me to see that hire. There was a lot of interaction. I know a lot of Georgia fans talked about that. And, I put in the headline, very good friend, because I thought it was ironic. One of the more interesting moments and really, to me, funny moments. It really kind of typified the way Kirby, it was almost like Kirby Smart was in a bad mood all last year, right? And when he's in a bad mood on somebody else, I laugh about it. When he's in a bad mood towards me, I get ticked off, right? But when Gus Malzahn said they might have them, remember this, the week of the Auburn game, and Gus Malzahn said they might have the most talent in the SEC. And Kirby Smart, took that as an insult. That's just coach speak, he says. The week that they're playing us, they say it. And then the next team. And then later we ask him about Auburn's receiver, and he says, yeah, I'm worried because Auburn's got the most talent. Kirby was angry. It was, I don't know, was it manufactured anger? Was he just looking to have a chip on the shoulder? Or is it just that him and Gus Malzahn, let's face it, cats and dogs, right? Kirby had to deal with Gus Malzahn for 11 years. 11 times he had to prepare for the Gus Malzahn offense. And I remember one time Kirby saying, when you play Gus, you just want to survive the first quarter and figure out what he's going to do. Now, Kirby was being a little modest there because 10 of the 11 times that Kirby Smart faced Gus Malzahn as a defensive coordinator, as a head coach, he held Gus below his average, his team's average for the season. So Kirby did a very good job. And certainly he won his last 4 meetings against Gus as a head coach. But it was, and I remember asking Gus about it, that week after Kirby kind of bit into him with that comment. Gus said, yeah, you got a rivalry here, and this is kind of what comes with it. But then in December, when we asked Kirby about Gus losing his job, Kirby said, he's been a very good friend of mine for a while. So it kind of lets you know that it was never really personal as much as it was just the competitive aspect of Georgia and Auburn being rivals, and Gus being a difficult coach to prepare for. And Kirby actually said before this year's game that that, they were playing a little bit more of a conventional style there with the new offensive coordinator. And I think that backfired on Gus. And I even said earlier this year on the Feinbaum show that I didn't think Auburn would score a touchdown in that game, and that Gus Malzahn's job security could be shaky. And at the time, Feinbaum laughed at me, right? And it turned out to be true. So, but I do think this, and I don't want to speak for everyone, and certainly Georgia fans have their own voices, but I think most people are kind of rooting for Gus Malzahn. Now, I've said before, he's got the personality of an Undertaker, but in truth, is there really any reason not to like Gus Malzahn? I mean, I don't feel – I know he said after that one game, and the live mic caught him saying, we beat the dog crap out of him, and everybody got all, oh, my God, did you hear? He didn't mean to say it. But I just, he just looks like your high school gym teacher, right? And maybe even a little nerdy, But I like Gus Malzahn. I've interviewed him several times. I love talking football with him. I do think he's an innovator, and I do want to see him have success at Central Florida. So some fun there today with Gus Malzahn getting that job. And again, second half of the show, we'll have an interview that I did with Shane Beamer. It's 30 minutes long. I think you're really going to like Shane Beamer. I know he's not a Georgia coach, but he's a guy that coached at Georgia, and I think you're really going to enjoy that Shane Beamer interview. So a story I did today, and I wrote it earlier, and I boosted it back up to the top of the page, and I don't usually do that, but I thought, this is a good story, and I noticed that some of the Georgia players retweeted it. And the Georgia players don't really comment on the team. You got to understand that. It's code, right? If you ask the Georgia players about the team, they're going to repeat whatever the head coach and the coaches say. But right now, nobody's saying anything. So sometimes you wonder, how do the Georgia players feel about these things that we talk about? I'd say a retweet is probably a good indicator that they agreed. If you go and look on our DawgNation website, and most of you have already read this, but I talk about the Georgia running back competition. Let me tell you, this is going to be intense. It's intense right now. There's only one football, and RBU really wasn't RBU last year. It wasn't. The running game was not there for Georgia when you needed it. I know this because I've got some Florida people that want to pretend like Florida wasn't trying in the second half. Look, they didn't score a touchdown in the second half against Georgia, and it wasn't because they didn't want to. If you think for a minute that Dan Mullen wouldn't have put 60 or 70 on Georgia if he could have, you're crazy, right? Obviously he would have. Georgia adjusted, and Florida couldn't score. In fact, Trask almost threw another pick six. If Mark Webb doesn't drop that interception with 6 minutes left and run it back, that's a one-score game. That's a new game now. I don't know that Georgia had a quarterback that was going to do anything because Stetson's shoulder was bad and Dewan was inconsistent. And in all fairness to Dewan, he hadn't gotten a lot of reps. It was a bad quarterback situation with Stetson getting injured on that first series with Georgia up 14-0. But what really happened was that Georgia couldn't run the ball. Florida had 9 possessions in the first half. 9 in the first half alone of last year's game. The year before, they had 9 the whole game. But Georgia was going 3 and out, and they did that 4 out of 5 series because they could not run the ball on Florida. And that was a big-time failing. Georgia could not run the ball effectively when they needed to. You saw it happen again against Cincinnati in the bowl game. There were some struggles there at times with the Georgia run game. I don't think that's going to be the case this year because a couple of reasons. One, the competition behind Zamir White is going to be better and more prepared. Now, here's what I mean by that. These guys were just as talented last year, but guys like Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton didn't have the opportunity to go through spring drills, and they weren't as good as Zamir in pass protection. And I don't think that Del McGee probably felt like they could do as many different things. Now, end of the year, final game-winning drive, you saw Kenny McIntosh out on the field with JT. That's who they wanted out there. That's who they trusted to run those routes and make those catches. Kenny clearly a level above Zamir as a receiver, and that spoke really well for Kenny. But in pass protection, Zamir was the best, and that gave him a leg up. And that stuff matters because if you lose your quarterback, right, you got trouble. In fact, next year, what stands between Georgia and a championship season potentially is keeping JT Daniels healthy. So whoever's back there with JT has to pass protect. And having spring drills is going to give Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh those 15 practices to get on a level with Zamir, okay? So now, all things being equal, they all pass protect. They all know the playbook. What's going to happen? There's one football, right? And Kirby Smart has said he's going to play the best guy, right? So it ain't about, well, Zamir's a good guy. No, who's the best? There's no time to play favorites. There's no time to, oh, well, no. They're all here to play. They're all on scholarship. They were all promised that the best guy would play. And I think it's going to be very competitive. It's going to be very interesting because, as I wrote, you can make the case that James Cook was underutilized when you look at how effective he was in the pass game, how explosive he was. You certainly can look at the metrics and see Kenny McIntosh was the best running back in terms of broken tackle rate, in terms of something they called gumption yards. And if you haven't read the story, you need to read it. But he had the best metrics, right? And then we know Zamir runs hard, but how effective was he on third down? Well, he ranked 8th in the SEC in third down running conversion rate, which is that good for Georgia? You tell me. So, and Dajon Edwards, here's a really fascinating statistic. So Dajon Edwards, the true freshman, has had 2 games with double-digit carries. James Cook's had 1 out of 35 games. Kenny McIntosh has had 1 out of 20 games. Kendall Milton's never had more than 8 carries in 1 game and has yet to score a touchdown at Georgia. So you got a lot of hungry dogs in that running backs room. And, Zamir's 1 more year back from the knee. I know there's a lot of people saying, hey, Mike, he looked better as the year went on last year. And I would agree. Had that nice run against Florida, well blocked, but Zamir still had to turn the corner and go 70. So how much better will Zamir be? How much better will Kendall be? How about Ken and Kenny Mack? Kenny had the hamstring and the knee from returning kicks. He was 3rd in the nation, right? And James Cook is 1 year bigger, better, and wiser. And Dajon Edwards, and this freshman Carroll's coming in going, wait a minute. I thought Zamir White was going pro. Yeah, sorry. Surprise, So there's only one ball. That's going to me, that's going to be the most fascinating watched competition on the team. And I wonder if they'll all be back or if somebody will transfer after the spring. I'm going to keep an eye on that position. There's a couple positions like that. Offensive line, a lot of big bodies, a lot of great depth. How deep will they go? Will Matt Luke go 7? Will he go 8, 9? Will you need to go deeper because you may play more tempo? We're talking about all these offensive weapons, right? We're talking about all these running backs. How about the receiver position? Where do we end it? George Pickens is number 1. Make no mistake about it. And listen, George could approach 15-game season if he stays healthy. He could approach 100 catches. No way, Mike. I'm telling you, George Pickens and JT Daniels, this is a contract year for both of them. George Pickens is going to have an enormous season. George Pickens has been watching film with JT Daniels, all right? You're going to see a different George this year. Jermaine Burton, explosive. Dominic Blaylock's back. Go-to guy, right? Great hands, Blaylock, Burton. Who's the number 2? Is it going to be Burton? Is it going to be Blaylock? Who's going to have more catches? Could it be Darnell Washington? Why not? He's 6'7", 265. You see the big guy? He just snatches that ball out of the air. He doesn't catch it with his body. You just see Darnell just snatch it. You go, oh, my gosh, this guy's a beast. 6'7", 265. You got to cover him, and then he'll put you on your can, too. He can block, man. So this is exciting. If you're a Georgia fan, you've got to be excited about the weapons and the arsenal that you got at running back. And so now D-Rob's back. Well, Demetrius Robertson, where's he fit? I don't know. What about Kyrus Jackson? Kyrus is going to find a way. He Peach County kid. He's tough. I got a feeling Kyrus is going to find a way. He didn't really jive with JT. Had that bad drop in the end zone. Had that other ball that kind of looked like he was going to catch it and went off his hands. Like he threw it back and bounced. The one interception JT threw off Kyrus. So where does Kyrus fit? How about John Fitzpatrick? He's all he's done is gotten bigger and better every year. He's a giant. He's about 6'7", kind of big, long, lanky guy, decent hands. So there's a lot of offensive weaponry for Georgia. I feel very comfortable telling you that Georgia's going to average more than 40 yards and probably over 500 yards of offense a game. I know that seems unbelievable and ridiculous, but I'm all in. Why? Because look at the schedule. Part of it is that you're not playing an SEC-only schedule, right? You got some weak teams in it. And this time around, I believe that Kirby Smart is all in on this offense. Now, last year, there was some sputtering. There was some grinding. he had an elite defense, a lot of talent, and I just think the head coach kind of had an idea of how that team's personality and makeup was, and I don't think he just wanted to just change things all of a sudden. But this team, whereas we see the savage pads and the savage mentality on offense, or excuse me, on defense, I think you're going to see a savage mentality on offense. And I don't know what it is, but I want to see something, right? They got those spiked shoulder pads on defense. I want to see something for the offense. I don't know. What do you guys think? What would be some good ideas to celebrate on offense that they could, what you put on a hat, a Hall of Fame jacket? I don't know. I'm not sure what you do on the sideline when your offense scores that to replicate the defense's savage pads. But I think you're going to see something on offense that shows you just how excited and aggressive this Georgia offense is going to be this season. So a lot of reasons, I think, for Georgia fans to be optimistic. Again, if you're just joining me, I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and share this right now. Let me go ahead and share this right now to our SEC Country page, as well as our DawgNation page where you're watching it, because I think some South Carolina people are going to want to watch it, because we are going to have Shane Beamer join us. I did an interview with Shane it was recently, I think it was Friday. Him and I talked for about 30 minutes. And you're really going to enjoy this interview. I enjoyed it. Like I said, Shane is a guy that I've known. I guess it was 2000 and hold on. Trying to multitask. I've known him since about 2002. He was a Tennessee graduate assistant. And I'll say this, I know that's not like a hugely popular hire, and I don't think that South Carolina is a threat to beat Georgia this year, and maybe not even next year. But this guy has the potential to be a long-term guy if he can get a little bit of success going. It could take a while. It could. I don't know how patient South Carolina is going to be, but he reminds me a lot of Dabo, right? I covered Dabo, and I knew Dabo really well in the 1990s. I don't talk about all these other schools often because we're here. Usually so much juice going on with Georgia. If it's the offseason, I don't mind telling you guys. I cut my teeth covering Alabama in the 1990s, right? So I show up and I do Auburn in 93, 94. Those are my first two SEC jobs. And then I went to the Mobile Register and I covered Alabama. I was the Alabama beat writer. I would stay in Tuscaloosa 5 nights a week at the Courtyard by Marriott and cover practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, go to lunch with the players Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then wherever they were at on the weekend, and then go back to Mobile. So I spent a ton of time in Tuscaloosa. I was covering everything: basketball, baseball, gymnastics. I know Alabama like the back of my hand. And Dabo was a guy that was on staff there when I covered him. And so I got to know him well too, because after practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and this seems unbelievable when you consider it, like I would literally go in the coaches' offices. Like Stallings would meet with us at his table for about 35 or 40 minutes, literally, and sit at this big, long coaches' table up in the coach's office. And then when we left, all the assistant coaches would be in their offices with their door open, and you just walk down the hallway and go in and sit down and talk to them. And so I had a lot of talks with Dabo Swinney back then, just a receivers coach. And the cool thing I'll tell you about Dabo, and you Georgia fans will get to know him better as next season approaches because of the big Georgia-Clemson game, is that Dabo is the same guy now that he was in 1995, 96, 97 when I knew him at Georgia. I mean to tell you, because I left that beat and went to Tennessee in 98, and I didn't see Dabo Swinney again until I was on the field in 2017 after he'd won a national title. And I walk up to him and he's walking off the field, after the big celebration. And I hadn't seen this guy in 18 years, right? Hey, Dabo! He turns around, Mike, how are you? Stops what he's doing, comes over, the guy hadn't seen me in 18 years. He just won a national title, but he's still Dabo. And it's like it's 1997 again. I'm just like, well, what are you doing here? Well, I covered Georgia now. And actually, I think I was covering Tennessee then. Yeah, covered. Oh, okay, good to see you, man. Hey, congratulations. He's Dabo, right? Beamer's the same kind of guy. The guy that you're going to see me interview here in a few minutes is the same guy that I ran into at Buckhead in 2002 when Tennessee was getting ready for a Peach Bowl. And I stayed in touch with Shane. And when I got the Georgia beat, I ran into Shane at Lake Oconee. Bruce Arians has this golf scramble and all these famous people are there, including Kirby Smart, which is why we cover it. But Bruce Arians is there, and Beamer's there because his dad, Frank, the legendary VTech coach, beloved guy that everybody loves, owns a house there. So Shane kind of grew up in this Athens area. Well, I'll let him tell you the story later in our interview. But and I said, hey, man, I'm just starting on can you give me some insight into George? He said, oh, yeah, just give me a call, whatever you need. And I call him. He kind of helped me out, hey, here's the pros and cons and good, that you're really going to like about the team. Kind of gave me some insights. So just a good guy, a guy that I personally hope does well. People ask all the time, who to sports, you root for your team. No, you root for people. You meet people in the industry that you connect with. And there's good dudes and there's bad dudes, right? Shane Beamer's a good guy. So I'll say that about that. Getting back to Georgia, big basketball game tomorrow night. I talked with Conzo Martin. Well, I texted with Conzo Martin a little bit earlier tonight. He was sitting on a runway in Missouri. The Tigers are flying in for their game tomorrow night. Hopefully, we'll say our prayers and well wishes, some treacherous weather out there. But Conzo getting ready for this game. Talked with Tom Crean earlier today. Listen, I know that Georgia basketball is not, but those kids have been resilient. They had a stretch where they won 5 out of 7 and 3 in a row, and I didn't hear anybody talking about it, right? Alabama went out there and shot the lights out the other day, 60% from 3, and scored 115. Now, yeah, Georgia could have defended better, but let's not act like Georgia rolled over and died. That isn't what's happening, all right? This team's culture has shifted. Now, they're not great. The talent really isn't there. There's not much of a margin for error, but they've shown a lot of resiliency, and I can tell you as somebody that's around the team, there's a lot better chemistry and a lot better kids in that program than there was when Tom Crean first took over. He's had to change the culture, right? I thought the Ant-Man came in and lit up a room, but, he was one guy and he was still learning. I think I want to see what Crean does this offseason. Needs to recruit some guys, need to get some dudes, needs Tamani Cabrera to come back. I think you're seeing Severe Wheeler do some things. They're a fun team to watch. They don't give up. That's what I'll say about that. Looking forward to tomorrow night's game with Missouri. Missouri, top 20 team. This will be the 3rd straight ranked team that Georgia's played within 7 days. So that's a tough challenge. But Missouri is a team, I think, no offense to my guy Conzo, because I covered him, and he's a good man. But I think this is a game Georgia could win if they shoot the ball halfway decent, right? Florida Saturday, I think that's a tough one. I'd take the Gators in that one. That is just a bad matchup. And I really like the athleticism on that Florida team. I think there's a really good ceiling for Florida. I'm not ready to cash it in on that Florida team. They're just so athletic. Not a good matchup for Georgia. So tomorrow night's game, very important for Georgia. Try to get off that losing streak. They lost at Tennessee, and then they lost at Alabama. Probably the 2 best teams in the league they've just played, and now they play another pretty good one, right? And I think Missouri is an NCAA tournament team. So this is a good test. Let's take a look. Take a look at your comments, guys. What do you want to know from me? We've got another 5 minutes or so before I'm going to shift into the Shane Beamer interview. I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, it's not all about Georgia. You're going to hear a lot about Shane. It was my chance to kind of just talk with him about how did he get here? Who is he? I really enjoyed my time with him. I hope I can get some other coaches on here. Again, DawgNation Georgia fans, they're some of the best informed in the SEC, and we want to bring you some opportunities to get to know some of the personalities of the league and a guy that's going to be competing with Georgia for players and on the field. And like I said, Shane's got some pretty fun stories to tell about Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. I will say this, and Rich Olenek is one of the guys very critical of me on social media. Rich, your opinions are always welcome, and I know you don't agree. I just want to tell you, I got to do the show the way that I think is best. So you can weigh in, but I'm going to do things the way that I think is the best the way that I can. Now, maybe somebody else could do it different, but I'm very genuine, as you all know. I'm very transparent in who and what I'm about and what I think is interesting. That's the only way I know how to do it. And sometimes you're going to agree and sometimes you're not. So I appreciate the feedback and I appreciate you watching. Someone to Neil asking if we can get Will Muschamp. I really wish we could. I'm sure that Will would like to do it, but Kirby is a coach that just doesn't want anybody else to talk. That's just the way he does things. It's the way Nick Saban does things. And so that's pretty much the way Kirby does things. Now, he does allow the coordinators to talk once at the beginning of the year. And then he also allows when the bowl people ask. And he allowed Scott Cochran to do an interview, which I thought was great because Cochran was electric. And then he also let Del McGee do an interview. So he really doesn't like his coaches to talk. I don't know why. I'm sure that there's a reason for that, but that's the way Kirby does business, and it's his show. And we play by Kirby Smart's rules, and I'm sure Will Muschamp does too. Will's probably glad just to get out of the spotlight for a couple of years. He's here to spend time with his kids and be an analyst. I think he's going to have a very valuable role and help Georgia out. So I really look forward to that. Tim Wilson says, what about players? Yeah, they don't let players talk here either much out of season. Kirby's very guarded with the media. I think that will change in the coming years when this name, image, likeness thing comes because players want to promote themselves. Kirby will change with the times. He's a smart coach. There's a reason for everything that he does. And I think that will change when name, image, likeness comes about because kids are going to want more publicity. And so I think he'll free them up and say this. I think Georgia players do a really good job with their interviews. They're always well prepared. Certainly they have a Hall of Fame staff there with Claude Felton, does a wonderful job. Mike Mobley, another guy, Christopher Leland. Listen, they've got a star-studded staff. Georgia does a great job with the media. So I think Kirby will probably open up a little bit, and you'll see a little bit more out of Georgia football moving forward, maybe even this season, because I think you're going to see some rock'em sock'em, lights out offense. Very excited. Thomas Ginn wants to know who will be the corners come game time. I'm going to take Jalen Kimber and somebody else. All right. I think there's a starting cornerback who's not here on campus yet. I've got some ideas of some guys that could transfer in, maybe even after spring. I like Keely Ringo at the star position. I could be wrong. Keely may end up being a lockdown corner, but he's a bigger physical guy, moves really well. I kind of like Keely at the start. That's my inkling, and I could be wrong. And certainly Lewis Seen back there is just an absolute beast. So excited about Lewis Seen. Lewis Seen has All-American written all over him. This is the guy that changed the way Kyle Pitts played football for the rest of his life. Pitts will never go over the middle the same way after the hit. It was a clean hit. It was a shoulder first hit. Unfortunately, Pitts ducked into it, and they have these rules about unprotected players. I'd like to see the quarterback and the offensive coordinator start protecting the players. Hey, don't send them over the middle on those throws if you want to protect them. It's the defense's job to make a tackle there. And that's what Lewis Seen did. It was a great hit. Someone's saying a lot of hype over the Dogs this coming season. Some concerns on either side of the ball. Certainly the secondary, you lose 4 out of your 5 starters, essentially. Christopher Smith is a guy to keep an eye on. He was only adequate, okay? If we're being honest, did Christopher Smith play championship football? No, he did not. He needs to get better. To be fair, he only has 5 games in, but this is a guy who had a lot of high ratings. This is a guy who's assignment sound. Can he get physically better and react faster? Time will tell. Can Latavius Brini evolve into something back there? He's been on the bench a long time. How about Amir Speed? He's been in the program a long time. He's a junior. Haven't seen much from him. He's a long, lanky, fast corner. So there's going to be some guys with some opportunities to step out of the shadows, right? Typically, if a guy hasn't played by his 3rd or 4th year, that's pretty telling. But not always. Sometimes guys can emerge, and Georgia has had a lot of quality depth over the years. So will the newcomers come in and slide by them, or will some of these veterans take advantage of the opportunity? And again, the transfer portal. To me, the secondary is what it's all about. It's a work in progress. I feel good about the parts and the capabilities of the offensive line. I think Georgia has plenty of depth, plenty of talent. I'm a big believer in Matt Luke. I didn't think the Sugar Bowl plan was good, but I think with an entire offseason, that offensive line is going to be rock solid. I think the quarterback situation is good, not great. If something happens to JT, I don't know if there's a quarterback that can lead you to a championship behind him. But there are capable guys there. Stetson Bennett now has experience. Carson Beck entering his 3rd year on campus, provided he stays after the spring. Keep an eye on that Beck-Bennett competition for number 2. Vandergriff, very young. Don't think I'd want any expectations on him this first year. If he gives you anything, it's a bonus, right? So that's that situation. But I feel good about the offense, right? And defensively, I think you've got the best defensive line in college football with Wyatt back, Julian Rochester, and of course, Jordan Davis, superstar. Adam Anderson needs to show he can stop the run. Great in pass rush, but not as great against the run. He needs to grow up, thicken up. Same thing with Nolan Smith, right? He was once the #1 overall recruit in the country. He hadn't done much the first 2 years for that. It's too soon to call him a bust. Need to see Nolan Smith on the field this year. And you got some other guys, Robert Beal, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker. Can these guys live up to their rating? Because so far the answer has been no. Very interesting team to watch next season. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and break now. I want to take a moment to recognize our sponsor, Ingles. I think you're going to enjoy the second half of the show with Shane Beamer. If you've got comments, drop them in here. I'll answer your questions online. But right now, let's take a moment and recognize Ingles. You know, we're at a point right now where our 33% of our population over 18 has either been vaccinated or recovered from COVID-19. The tide's kind of turned, right? But we got a ways to go. And a part of the way we've gotten through this first part of the pandemic has been our friends at Ingles. They're on the front lines every day, making sure that we have the supplies that we need for our families, for ourselves. Can't thank Ingles enough. They do a wonderful job sponsoring the program, and they've done a wonderful job delivering for us in this very difficult time. Let's take a moment to recognize Ingles. And when we come back, Shane Beamer joins us for the second half of the program.
It's in our hearts to feel for real. There's been ups and downs, turnarounds, good days and some bad. But we stand together for worse and for better. We'll always have your back with open arms, heart to heart, hand in hand. Community strong.
Well, welcome back to the program. As promised, we're going to get to Shane Beamer interview. Michael Carvel, my producer, if you could tee that up, we're ready to roll. Well, as promised, our special guest tonight, Mr. Shane Beamer. I can't believe we're having this conversation, Shane. It seems like yesterday we were out to dinner in Atlanta in Buckhead in 2001, and you were a grad assistant, and I was still cutting my teeth covering the Vols, and now you're the head coach of South Carolina. And I got to ask you, I mean, are there days you still wake up and go, man, is this really here? Am I really the boss now?
About every day. You know, I'm staying, my family's not here yet, so I'm staying in a condo that's right in between our football facility and the stadium. So I'm in a parking garage, and when I walk into the parking garage, I'm literally looking right at Williams-Brice Stadium. And then that's like my wow moment every day. And then to just walk into this brand new facility that we're in and see Shane Beamer, head football coach, it never gets old, and I don't think it ever will be. And certainly there's a lot to do, but I'm so blessed and so grateful and so humbled to be the head football coach here, and just have loved every second of it.
Well, I think it's a feel-good story. You know, a good guy. You know, people think of Shane Beamer, he's a good guy. He's the son of Frank Beamer. I mean, it's a legacy that you've lived with for a long time. I guess you were 9-10 years old when your dad became the head coach. What do you take back from that memory? I mean, what's it like when your dad is the guy and you're, you know, growing up in your youth through your adolescence?
Yeah, no, I mean, so early on, my first memories are when he was the head coach at Murray State out in Kentucky, FCS or 1AA program at the time. And that was cool, you know, but then he takes the job as the head coach at Virginia Tech as I was going into my 5th grade year. And then that's a different level. Obviously, Virginia Tech then isn't what Virginia Tech ended up being at the end of his career. So it was pretty cool. Your dad's the head coach at the big time program in town. And probably the thing that just I took from that more than anything was just watching him kind of build that program and the struggles and what a thin line it is between winning and losing. You know, like he got hired in 5th grade. When I was a 5th grader is when he got hired. But Virginia Tech did not go to a bowl game until my junior year in high school. And so from 5th grade to 11th grade, there was some lean years and some struggles, and just seeing how he handled that as a person, a coach, a husband, a father, watching how he built it, but then just realizing how hard winning is. In 1992, they won 2 games. I think they led or were tied 6 times in the fourth quarter that year, couldn't get over the hump. And then from 92 to 93, they ended up winning nine games in 93, and the rest is history. So that was a great lesson for me that still has resonated and stayed with me to this day, is just that time period and how he built that thing.
Now, you could have had scholarship to some smaller schools. You obviously played football like most coaches' sons do, but you chose to walk on at Tech. Was that an automatic? Did you know you were playing for your dad? I mean, was that the goal all along, or was that something you just kind of thought of?
No, I was a decent high school football player. Not great. Wasn't like I had everybody beating down my door. I had, I had powerhouses like Bridgewater College and Emory and Henry that were recruiting me. And my senior year in high school, we went to the state semifinals, and I bounced around. I played some quarterback, wide receiver, and defensive back in high school. Well, my senior year, when we went on that playoff run, I was playing receiver and had some pretty good games, and recruiting started to pick up a little bit. And I'll never forget, James Madison called me. The head coach was Rip Shearer, and they wanted to bring me in on an official visit. And then I said, absolutely, let's go. I mean, I was fired up. This is like December of 94. And then a couple of weeks later, Rip Shearer leaves to become the head coach at Memphis. And then I never heard from James Madison again. And then the other one was Charleston Southern right here in South Carolina. This is a great one. They called me December as well. We were in the state semifinals. They said, we've watched your tape. We love the way you play. We want to bring you to Charleston Southern on an official visit. We're going to fly you down to Charleston and wine and dine you all weekend. And I'm like, man, this is big time. They're bringing me on an official visit. And then about 2 days before I was supposed to go on the visit, they called up. And the assistant coach, I'll never forget this, the assistant coach says, we can't bring you in on a visit this weekend. We're having some budget cuts, and they're turning off all the power at our university this weekend. And at the time, maybe that was true. As I've gotten older, I think I've realized that's code for somebody said, we're not bringing this guy in and wasting money on an official visit. So needless to say, I never heard from Charleston Southern again. So at that point, it really kind of got into, do I want to walk on at Virginia Tech, or do I want to go to maybe a smaller school and play a little bit more? And my high school football coach told me, pick a school that if you were not playing football, you'd be happy going to school at. And without a doubt, that was Virginia Tech. But it wasn't a slam dunk, because I worried about the perception of playing for your dad and how I would be accepted amongst the team and things like that. But I went, and so thankful that I did. It was a great experience, the 5 or 4.5 years I was there.
Yeah. I'm going to make a memo here. I think South Carolina beat Charleston Southern about 72-10 2 years ago. Sounds like they might want to dodge your program for a while there, Shane. Don't hold any grudges there. 1999, you mentioned you go to Virginia Tech, you play some receiver, and you pick up the long snap. And obviously, as you said, Virginia Tech at that point, national championship contender. I mean, a lot of great things were happening at Virginia Tech. I think in the national title game in 99, you played Florida State. Was that Vic's redshirt freshman year then? So what do you remember from playing in that national championship game?
Oh, man, what a fantastic game it was. What a heartbreaking game it was to lose in the national championship game. I mean, you think about it as my last game in college. In 1999, we're down 28-7. We come back, we take the lead going into the fourth quarter, and then Chris Winkie and Peter Warwick kind of take over, and we end up losing in the fourth quarter. That's one of those, that's a thing that's literally stayed with me to this day, losing in the national championship game, and then being at Georgia and losing in the fashion that we lost to Alabama at the end of the 2017 season, just crushing. But just what a storybook year it was, having a chance to play for the national championship and being undefeated with your dad as the head coach, and you're a senior on the team, was pretty cool. But just with that game, it was just Michael Vick and the talent level. I mean, you remember this. This is one of those things that Florida State won the national championship, but the next day, everybody's talking about Michael Vick, the quarterback of the losing team. And A fantastic year, and just wish we had been able to finish it a little bit better and stronger than we did.
Yeah, Tech actually outgained Florida State in that game, had over 500 yards of offense, and as you said, led 29-20. Not rubbing it in, just saying that's how good Virginia Tech was, and I really thought maybe the better team. As you said, there were some tough breaks. You know what? Everybody loved and still loves about your dad, though, is in much in sort of the same fashion of Bobby Bowden. The Hokies, we may not know what a Hokie is still, but we know they leave it all out on the field. I mean, he went for fourth downs. He went for 2-point conversions. I got to ask you, I mean, how far from the tree does the apple fall? Do you envision yourself being that sort of riverboat gambler at South Carolina?
I think so. I mean, I'm an aggressive guy by nature, and I think every game is different. Every situation's different. And I think a lot of it depends on, your team and who you're playing and how the game is going. But certainly any advantage you can find, we're going to explore that and exhaust every avenue. And whether that means, faking kicks and going for it on fourth down, I think it's all just kind of relative, but certainly nothing that I'm against. And you got to do it at the end of the day, whatever you got to do that gives your team the best chance to win, for sure.
And we mentioned, obviously, you picked up a lot from your father, the great Frank Beamer, but you've worked for a lot of other coaches, Sylvester Croom, I believe, at Mississippi State, Steve Spurrier, right? So this is the second go-round at Carolina. You were there with Spurrier in 2007, and I believe, I think when I talked with Coach Spurrier a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the first time that they beat Georgia and Tennessee. I don't know. He had all these numbers. It's amazing, Steve's recollection. But how did you get hooked up with Spurrier, and what did you take from working with Steve Spurrier?
Somebody that to get a phone call from him to see if I was interested in coming was fantastic. I mean, it's a funny story. My wife and I, we had just gotten married the summer before. So we got married the summer of 2006. And then I'll never forget, we were on vacation. My parents gave us this like a wedding gift, like a few days at the beach down at Kiowa in outside Charleston. And we were sitting there, and I was coaching at Mississippi State at the time. And I'll never forget her and I sitting there thinking, we said to ourselves, how fantastic would it be to coach at South Carolina one day? We were sitting out by the pool, and just the fact we like to stay at South Carolina, we love the beaches here. And then right after that season is when he called to see if I was interested in coming. And I think it was just kind of right place, right time. The year before, I was at Kell High School there in Georgia, and I was there one day watching practice with Tyrone Nix. And Tyrone at the time was on the defensive staff at South Carolina. We had a mutual friend in Freddie Kitchens, who was the head coach at Cleveland, as you know, from Alabama. Freddie and I were together at Mississippi State. So Ty and I just started talking because we both knew Freddie, kind of hit it off. And then the next year, Coach Spurrier was looking for an assistant coach. And I think he was looking for somebody that maybe had a special teams background and was coaching, had some defensive experience. And Ty mentioned my name to him. And I think Coach Spurrier liked the fact that I had some special teams background at places I'd been and with my dad, and the rest is history. So that was a great experience and learned so much from him. I mean, I'm so thankful for him giving me an opportunity to come here to Columbia to coach. But really, I think the biggest thing with him is just this from covering SEC all these years, just the, whatever you want to call it, the swagger, the confidence, the aura that he carried himself with, and how that just resonated with his teams. And you've been around some head coaches, you have, that, on game days, they're as tight as can be and nervous and uptight. And he was like so far, like I'd see him and think, is something wrong with me? Cause he's like so loose and confident. But his teams played that way. And it was, it was a great lesson for me to see that and learn from him and what we were able to accomplish, because we accomplished a lot during the 4 years I was here, and great recruiting classes and playing for the SEC championship against Auburn in 2010 and beating Clemson, started a streak of 5 years in a row, and beat Georgia, beat Florida, beat Tennessee. I mean, it was showed what can be done here, and I'm thankful for that opportunity that I had to be part of it.
Yeah, Steve Spurrier, the last SEC East head coach to beat Nick Saban at Alabama. Got to go on the Wayback Machine there for you, Shane. Did some incredible things at South Carolina, as you said, getting the Gamecocks to the SEC title again. I believe you ran into Cam Newton that year, right?
We did twice. Yeah. Played him in Auburn and then ran into him in Atlanta again.
Oh, that's not good. It wasn't good for anybody that year.
No.
So you go and work for your dad then. I mean, did your dad know he was auditioning for a job with you later when you coached under him at Virginia Tech? What was that like going and being a member of your dad's coaching staff at Virginia Tech?
It was awesome. You know, when I finished up at Virginia Tech in 1999, and I knew I wanted to get into coaching, and I could have stayed and been a graduate assistant with him, but it was important to me, and this, no disrespect to any son of a coach that has worked for their dad and only their dad, but I just wanted to get out and make my own name. I didn't want anybody to ever say that this guy, that I got a job because my dad, gave me a job. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that I didn't get hired as a graduate assistant at Georgia Tech in 2000 because of my last name. I mean, it helped me get my foot in the door, but certainly you got to keep it there once you get your foot in the door. I spent 11 years coaching at different places, like you've alluded to, thinking that eventually I'd go back to Virginia Tech. But then the more and more I was gone, the more entrenched I got at other places. And we loved it here in Columbia. We were not looking to leave. Part of it was nobody ever left my dad's staff at Virginia Tech. It was a great place to live and work, and they were winning football games, and nobody ever left. And he had a couple coaches that retired, and he called, and I just got to thinking about it. I knew he was getting kind of up in age towards the end of his career. I didn't want to look back and say I wish I had coached for my dad at some point. I felt like after 11 years, I'd made my own name enough where it gave me some credibility going back. And I'm so thankful that I did. I went up there and honestly didn't think it would be 5 years that I was there, but I spent 5 seasons with him, and it was awesome. Just, from our first year playing for the ACC championship and then going to play in the Sugar Bowl, to just being with him his last season as he retired, that was pretty special, to go out with him and be part of his last season, where I think we were 4-5 at one point and needed to get to 6 wins to get into a bowl game, and won 2 of our last 3, and then went back to the Independence Bowl, which was his very first bowl game at Virginia Tech, was the Independence Bowl in 1993. For that to be his last game at Virginia Tech was pretty cool. And to be on the sidelines with him, it was fun for my children and my wife to be with their granddad and father-in-law for that time also.
Yeah, that's magical. I mean, that's storybook stuff, Shane. And I think everyone, watching this is glad that you had that opportunity. They just said your dad is so beloved. I've not heard one person ever say a bad thing about Frank Beamer, but maybe right after his team beat him. There'd be a 24-hour window they could be upset, but, just such a classy guy. Well, then you come to Georgia, and obviously our show here is based in Georgia, and a lot of fans are saying, man, he's got the South Carolina coach. Why we got you told me some things. I think we were at the Bruce Arians Golf Scramble when I first met you, and you were working on Kirby's staff. You were a part of that 2016 staff. And obviously that was a very special beginning for Georgia. Not one of your rivals, but as you reflect back and you look around at other guys on that staff, Sam Pittman, now a head coach at Arkansas, Mel Tucker, now at Michigan State, you're here at South Carolina. What was that first Kirby staff like? And what did you remember about how you were able to build from 16 into, as you said, that championship caliber season in 17?
No, it was awesome. Athens was a place that my parents have a house over on Lake Oconee, right down the road from Athens. So we were always, ever since 1989, we spent at least 2 weeks of summer in that area. So I was very familiar with Athens and Georgia, and that was a place that, coming in there as an opponent, I always wanted to coach. So thankful that Kirby gave me that opportunity to come to Georgia in 2016 after my dad retired. It was great for me going into it because I didn't really know a lot of those guys. I knew of them. Obviously I knew Kirby, but Scott Sinclair and I had worked together at Georgia Tech back in 2001, I guess, 2001. But beyond that, it was just people like names, people I recognized. Tracy Rocker, knew of him. Mel Tucker, knew all about him from his NFL days. Sam Pittman was a nationally recognized offensive line coach. Jim Chaney, knew him going back to his Purdue days, or knew of him. James Coley had been in the ACC at Miami and different places. And so people that I knew of but didn't really know. But you knew as he put it together, it was really a great staff that he was putting together. And just to be able to go in day one and see how everything is implemented. Like everybody talks about, well, I've worked for Nick Saban and I understand his process and how they do things. Well, maybe, but I got to see that implemented from day one. And Kirby explained, here's why we do this, not just somebody gets hired by Nick Saban and here's what we do. So that was great to just kind of see that. It made me a better coach. Kirby is somebody that I've known for a long time. I consider a friend, but he forces you to get out of your comfort zone. He won't let anybody be complacent. He makes you think of new ways of doing things. He challenges you. He's demanding, and it made me a better coach during my time with him. There's no doubt. And then 16 to 17, and there's a lot of things. I mean, I think a lot of it though was really just the leadership, and it's always just kind of stayed with me. We didn't have a bad team in 16. We didn't have bad kids, but it just seemed like when we came back in January 2017, that it was just a different mentality, that Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and Roquan Smith, Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy, those guys just said, you know what, it's going to be different this year. And the way they held each other accountable and had those other guys follow them, I think it's a testament to the leadership of those guys. And then obviously Jake Fromm coming in and playing like he did throughout the season as well. But that was another, magical season, and I'm very blessed that I had a chance to be part of.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you were talking about Kirby making you uncomfortable, one of his favorite sayings is, you got to be comfortably being uncomfortable. Of course, this last year we've done that. I did want to ask you one follow-up question. When we talked, again, this was a couple years ago when I was talking to you about the 2017 team, and you weren't making any excuses, but you said, Mike, people don't realize just how big that Charlie Warner injury was. It's 3 years later, right, or 4 years later. I don't think anybody's going to be upset, but what was the relevance of Charlie's injury in the Rose Bowl as far as you were concerned, and how that might have carried over into the title game?
Yeah, just a guy that he's the reason he's playing for the San Francisco 49ers right now. He was just a heck of a football player. I mean, played on special teams and was great on special teams, but was just a weapon on offense. And we had some good tight ends that played in that national championship game. Jeb Blazevich, Isaac Nada, Jackson Harris all played that night. But Charlie was the one that I just think he was playing really good football towards the end of the season, speed, physicality, athleticism, and that was something that, as close as that Alabama game was in the national championship, not that one player was going to make a difference, but I just think about plays that, Charlie wasn't out there for, that if he had been out there on that field, and Nada played well that night, Jeb played well that night, but you think about plays that maybe Charlie had been out there and things that could have been different, just to have another guy out there from a special team standpoint even. So that was a tough loss, but what a tough kid, and what a kid, tough young man, great young man, somebody I still enjoy talking to this day. But that was tough to lose him in the Rose Bowl against Oklahoma and not having him in the championship game.
Yeah, well, personnel package. You hear so much about the 12 personnel, and him and Nada, two NFL tight ends that could have been on the field at one time. Yeah. On to Oklahoma, right? How do you know it's time? Because you coached a lot of places, coached a lot of positions. Like you mentioned, your special teams background, but you've also coached cornerbacks, you've coached outside linebackers, you've coached running backs. How did you know that Oklahoma would be a move? You kind of left the SEC. Was that a get out of your comfort zone, this is too good of an opportunity, or how did that come about?
Lincoln Riley, period. I was not looking to leave Athens. My wife and our three children, we loved living in Athens, loved it, loved working for Kirby. Kids were happy in their school that they went to. Being 45 minutes from Lake Oconee was great. I mean, we weren't looking to leave at all. And I'll be honest with you, if it hadn't been Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma, I would not have left. But at that point, I had interviewed for head coaching jobs over the years before I got to Georgia. And then when I was at Georgia as well, and the ones that I didn't get, a lot of times it came back, well, he hasn't been an offensive coordinator. He doesn't have coordinator experience. And that always bothered me. And that's a whole other story, because I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. But I just felt like for me to broaden my horizons and help me as a coach, the opportunity to get in the middle of the Lincoln Riley offense and what we were doing offensively at Oklahoma was something I needed to do. And I remember talking to Mel Tucker, actually, because we had just played Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. And I remember talking to Mel when I was trying to make a decision, and Mel was like, look, man, that what they're doing offensively at Oklahoma is on the cutting edge of anything that's being done offensively across the country. And he didn't say go, but he said to get connected with that, I just think opens up a lot of doors for you. And I just felt like getting connected with Lincoln. You got, if you look at two of the top young coaches in college football, it's Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart. The opportunity to get connected with Lincoln. Eventually he's going to probably coach in the NFL at one point someday down the road, maybe. Learning that offense. Offenses nowadays, that's kind of the name of the game in college football. I just felt like I needed to do that. One, to get out of our comfort zone a little bit as a family. But two, primarily just football, because I felt like it would open up more doors for me from a career standpoint going forward. And did I know that I was going to be the head coach of South Carolina 3 years later? No. But there's no question I'm probably not sitting in this chair right now if I hadn't gone to Oklahoma. Maybe, but I doubt South Carolina hires me if I'm just the tight ends coach and special teams coordinator at Georgia. Maybe they do, but certainly getting connected with Lincoln from an offensive standpoint helped me grow as a coach, but also opened up other opportunities for me.
Yeah, your resume really is incredible, Shane, when you think about it. I mean, you mentioned Lincoln Riley being cutting edge of offense, and I think of Frank Beamer and those incredible special teams that Virginia Tech is known for. You cut your teeth under John Chavis at Tennessee, one of the greatest defensive coordinators of our era. You were there for 2 years under the chief, a tough, grizzled guy that, by the way, told me, you tell Shane how happy I am for him, and make sure you let everybody know how prepared he was at every turn, Mike. He said, I would ask Shane for something and he'd have it done faster than anybody. I couldn't get on him even if I wanted to. So you got a fan out there.
Don't believe that. He certainly got on me over those 3 years.
Well, that's part. I'm his friend, and he gets on. That's part of John Chavis. I don't think there's anybody he doesn't get on. I think you got to worry about it if he doesn't get on.
True.
That's the way the chief works. But a lot of people on the outside, as you said, they just look at it and go, "Gosh, he doesn't have coordinator experience," or "Geez, he hasn't been a head coach before." And the name that I can't help but come up with, and this may be politically incorrect, but I know this guy well too, is Dabo Swinney. And I knew Dabo when I covered Alabama. And the thing about you and Dabo, the things about you and Dabo that I find strikingly similar, number one, success doesn't change you. And everybody says it and it's cliche, but believe me, I've done this long enough to see differences in people when they have success. You were the same guy when I walked up to you at Lake Oconee Country Club 2 years ago as you were when you were a graduate assistant in Buckhead at a dinner party. Nothing had, even now, nothing had changed. Dabo, same way. And I also think about the seemingly unassuming personality and respect for the coaches around you. As much as you've gone out and hired great coaches around you and have benefited from learning. And I think Dabo is that same way, that whole, I don't want to say too much delegation because I know you're going to be hands-on, but you guys seem to know how to let the people around you do their jobs. I guess I'd ask you to elaborate. Do you have a relationship with Dabo, and have you heard those comparisons before?
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. And that's one thing, not to go back, but just one thing I learned from my dad was I saw that he never changed. Like in 1992, they won 2 games, and he would have been fired in today's time. But from there to the national championship to his last year in coaching, he was the same guy, never treated people differently. And that was a great lesson for me to just always treat people right and just be thankful and grateful for where you are and treat people the right way and not walk around commanding respect because of the way you like yell and get on people, but just treat people the right way. But no, I appreciate you saying that. And to me, that's a heck of a compliment. Very much have a relationship with Dabo Swinney. In fact, he was probably one of the very, very first people that reached out to me when I got this job. We've talked 2 or 3 times since then. We're competitors, we're rivals, but he is the same person. I mean, he was the recruiting coordinator at Clemson and the receivers coach when I was at South Carolina as the recruiting coordinator. So we kind of got to know each other during that time. We have someone that both of us love dearly that and Woody McCorvey, that has had as much of an impact on anybody in this profession on me. And I think Dabo would say the same thing. So just knowing how I feel about Coach McCorvey and how Coach McCorvey feels about Dabo and vice versa, we're certainly connected from that standpoint. And he is just a genuinely good person. And yeah, we're rivals and competitors, and we're going to try and beat each other's brains out on the football field and all that stuff. But you can still be appreciative for where you are and treat people the right way. And he's been very good to me since I got this job, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like I said, I think it's very similar situations, very qualified guys that, in position to make the most of it, young, a lot of energy. As you mentioned, Dabo has Woody. You've got your dad. How involved is your father going to be with you at South Carolina? I mean, that just seems like such a great resource.
Yeah, no, I want him around. I mean, I got to get him away from the 6 grandkids, our 3 and my sister's 3. Between that and the golf course, I think football is kind of his third priority, but he loves being around it. When I was at Oklahoma, Lincoln was very good in allowing him to come around, as was Kirby at Georgia. And, I don't know if he necessarily misses coaching, but he misses being around the team. So I'm really eager to get him here. Let him meet our coaches, get around our players. He'd be is a great resource for me, and certainly want him around. And you're right. I mean, I think it's hiring good people, surrounding yourself with great people, letting them coach. I've been fortunate, like you said. I've got experience on all 3 sides of the ball. I've been a recruiting coordinator. I've been a special teams coordinator. I've been an associate head coach. I've been an interim head coach. So I know enough to be dangerous in a lot of areas. But I feel like the role, and I said this when I interviewed with Ray Tanner, our athletic director, and I mean it. I really feel like the roles that I've been in my career have prepared me for this opportunity more so than if I had just been a offensive coordinator for the last 10 years, just because of the different experiences that I've had. So I'm excited about that, and definitely want to have my dad around and be able to rely on him also and pick his brain on things.
Absolutely. Well, listen, before I let you go, and I've taken up a lot of your time, Shane, I appreciate it. It's been great catching up, and certainly enjoyed the interview. Somebody that covered you earlier in your career. I'm one of those guys that's proud of you and wants to see you have success. One of the good guys. You like it when the good guys make it. I think the fans are going to really like you too. You're talking about, can't believe we're saying it, opening up practices in an era where everybody wants it behind the Iron Curtain. You're talking about opening up some practices and being fan friendly at South Carolina. What goes into that logic, and when did you think about that?
Some is the key word for sure. And we definitely want to be fan friendly, but we've got one of, if not the greatest fan bases in America. I mean, you've been over here for enough games. That atmosphere in Williams-Brice Stadium is second to none anywhere in the country. And it's been hard on all of us without being able to pack stadiums here in the last year. And there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of excitement about South Carolina Gamecock football right now. And the more that we can just capitalize on that, the better. So we certainly want to give our fans opportunities to watch us practice. And then I also think it's great for our players as well, just to be able to get out and play in an environment. It gives a practice or a scrimmage a lot more energy when there's people in the stands. For sure. And we want to be selective with it for sure. You're right. I mean, everybody in college football, they're pretty much running the same schemes. So it's not like we're reinventing the wheel out there with what we're doing. So we're not going to go out there and show every scheme that we're running for sure if we do that. But I think the more times you can put your players in those settings as well, players and coaches, we're the one sport at any level that does not get a preseason game or a scrimmage against another team. I mean, I can't think of one that doesn't. So the first time that we go out and play in a stadium in front of fans, it counts. Like, it's a real game. So the more we've got a young team, we've got a lot of new players and new faces here that haven't played in front of crowds like that before, the more times we can put them in opportunities like that where it's not the first time on game day, I'm all for.
Yeah, great idea, Shane. You bring so much energy and excitement, and like I said, just a lot of feel good to South Carolina football. I know there's some challenges ahead, but you've been through it. You've seen it done other places. Certainly here at Georgia, Kirby had a pretty tough first year by Georgia standard. hard to believe they lost to Vanderbilt. 1 year later, Georgia's good as anybody, and now you're in the SEC where you belong, and I think you'll do a great job. Shane, I want to thank you again for joining me here on our Eagles on the Beat segment. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck to you at South Carolina.
Thanks for having me on. I've always had a ton of respect for your work and still do, and appreciate you having me on. And it was great visiting with you. Thanks.
Yeah, it really was fun to talk to Shane Beamer, and he is a guy, you can tell how likable he is. I saw a lot of comments during that interview, people saying, Shane Beamer is going to be a good recruiter, and he's a hard guy not to root for. Some people saying, Mike's going to have you. Listen, when you do my job, you meet coaches and people over the years, and you build relationships and friendships, and it's not like I'm going out to dinner and I'm calling Shane Beamer up, 3 times a week, right? It's just a guy that our paths crossed. We had a lot of mutual respect, and you stay in touch with. It's like that I said with Conzo Martin, Rick Barnes, Bruce Pearl, coaches that I've covered, Philip Fulmer, Pat Narduzzi, John Chavis. You heard me brought up the defensive coordinator, spoke with John last week, Woody McCorvey, Dabo Sweeney. My business is knowing people. And so a lot of times when I give opinions, I wish I could say that I was the smartest guy in the world and I just came up with all this. And my opinions are my opinions, but I derive my opinions from talking to experts in the profession. I don't tell you every single interview that I've had, or, oh, geez, I talked to this coach about that or this coach about that and ran this by him or ran that by him. But over time, you make a big network of friends that you talk to. And, later tonight, I'm hoping to catch up with Conzo, and hear what Conzo thinks about Tom Crean, right? And maybe get a couple comments for an article tomorrow. But then just kind of ask Conzo how he's doing at Missouri. When he was at Tennessee, he went to the Sweet 16 there, and they wouldn't even extend his contract, right? Now, Rick Barnes goes to the Sweet 16, is the third highest paid coach in college basketball. So when Conzo beat Tennessee earlier this year, that was a huge win for Conzo and his family. Not that he hates Tennessee, but that was an emotional time for him to leave Tennessee, for him to go in there and follow Bruce Pearl, which was very difficult. And then have to leave and go to Cal. And he wasn't fired. He left on his own. But the reason he left on his own was they wouldn't extend his contract. And so I like to see Conzo doing well at Missouri, knowing what he's been through. And I see some of you in here talk about, how you understand how it is for coaches. And that interview you saw with Shane, that's not a typical interview. That's 2 guys that have known each other a long time. I wanted it to be a conversation, like it was just him and I catching up. And you were listening in, and that's what it was. And I'm sure the South Carolina fans, if you know any, share that video with them. They'll really enjoy getting to see that side of their head coach, because he doesn't necessarily know all those media people there. So it's a little bit different for him to do interviews with them. And it takes time to get to know coaches and for coaches to feel comfortable kind of letting their hair down like Shane did. And it was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, I appreciated the audience. I didn't see too many people attacking or getting ugly. I know my show is a little bit different on Monday nights. I know we don't just talk Georgia only, because I think that the broader perspective that you have and the different personalities that I can bring to you in the Georgia Forum, I think that gives you guys a little bit of the perspective and expertise I have, right? You've heard from somebody else now talk about what it was like to coach in Kirby Smart system right out of the gate. And I loved what he said about Kirby didn't just tell you what to do. He explained why you were doing it. And Shane saying, you know what, Kirby Smart made me a better head coach or a better coach. That's big, right? And as one of my commenters said in here, Matt says, well, you took up a lot of his time. Well, I appreciated Shane giving me that time. I really did. But that's the kind of guy he is, right? Just because he's the South Carolina head coach doesn't mean he's going to forget, some of the friends that he's had in the business and people that have been there and talked to him at different times, when he's needed something on the other side. So it's a two-way street. That's how sports works. There's a lot of relationships, no different than business. So I really want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. I really want to thank my producer, Michael Carvel. We've gone late at 8:45. Usually we're done by 8:30, but tonight's show went a little bit long because of the Shane Beamer interview. And I wanted to come back and have a chance to talk with everyone tonight. And thank you for being such a great audience. I love seeing you guys on Monday nights. This off season's tough, but we're getting through it. That hopefully tomorrow night the basketball team can give you something to cheer for. Baseball's getting ready to start. Softball's off to a good start. I'm going to have the story tomorrow. Quick tease before I let you go. I've got an idea. This is one of these ideas. People might say I'm crazy. I haven't been here long enough. Don't understand this or that. But what if you built that softball stadium up, build it up big, make it beautiful, and play baseball off campus, where you can have 8,000 to 10,000 people at Georgia baseball games drawn from Gwinnett County and Atlanta, where it's easy access in and out, because it's hard to get in off campus, and there's not enough parking, and you're only getting 3,000 people at Foley Field. Let the softball team play there. Put the baseball team off campus where you could sell 8,000 to 10,000 tickets. Because right now your baseball team's losing a couple $1 million a year, and you're not charging any admission for softball. When if you put it on campus, you could. Softball is a very popular sport, better TV ratings than college baseball or NHL. So that's my idea. I'm going to write something to that effect tomorrow, some way, shape, or form. Be ready for that. Also, Georgia spring board meeting is tomorrow. I'll be in on that. We'll hear what Josh Brooks has to say, some updates, and then tomorrow night the basketball game has been moved to 7 p.m. back from 6:30. So everybody, thanks for joining me tonight. Tomorrow, DawgNation Daily with BA. Tomorrow night, Connor Riley. Wednesday night, Centel's Intel. Jeff Centel has been putting out some great stories. Stay with us on DawgNation. Everybody be safe out there. Stay warm. Take care of yourself in this bad weather, and I'll see you again.